Someone in the waiting room there, Sean.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Economic Development Commission meeting of October 6th. I think this will be our first meeting with not much airtime dedicated to outdoor dining, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in our council update, I imagine. But good progress since our last meeting there. Would like to start this month's meeting by welcoming our latest commissioner. We've got Jen Scamachi joining us. Jen, if you'd like to give us a little background on your
Oh, sure. Yeah.
interest in, yeah.
It all started on March 20th. No, I'm just kidding. I am a New Hampshire resident of 21 years. I've been in Portsmouth 11. I currently am a strategic planning facilitator for SME Strategy, a firm out of Vancouver, Canada. And I moonlight as DJ Scooch. And I just love Portsmouth, and I'm psyched to be here. I've got my MBA from UNH. Before that, I worked in higher education for 11 years. Got my MED from UMass Amherst, originally from Long Island, New York. Got 2 elderly pugs at home. Happy to be here.
Great.
Hey, what town in Long Island?
Levittown.
Oh, I grew up in Huntington.
Did you? Oh, basically neighbors.
Well, great to have you. Welcome. Look forward to hearing from you in our meetings moving forward. So next on our agenda, we just have the review and approval of the draft minutes from our September 8th meeting. Anyone has any feedback, well, I would entertain that. Otherwise,
So moved.
if there's a motion, I would entertain that. Great. A second? Second. Andy? Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Great. Thank you, everybody. So we don't have our land use liaison member here yet this morning, so let's jump to Ben in the Chamber Collaborative. If you're
Oh man!
too early.
Usually I have some time
4
to like
minutes in.
put some notes down here. You're like killing me. All right. Good morning, everybody. It's a busy time of year for us at the Chamber. I think I say that every month. I'm looking for a break, but it doesn't seem to happen. So let's see. We have a couple important things coming up. One. Restaurant Week is right around the corner, starting on the 2nd of November. We have 29 restaurants participating this year, which is slightly down, but we do have Soul and Portsmouth Brewery that are offline due to projects and renovations and reconstruction there, so that's the cause for that. But we are excited about that and full marketing campaign. One of the things that we are doing a bit more of this year, it's kind of been a building effort over the last couple of restaurant weeks, is to support our gather in food insecurities in the community. So partnering with Northeast Credit Union to raise some funds for that cause and encourage people that are out to enjoy a wonderful meal of their own to perhaps give a little bit more so that they can help those that don't have the opportunity to enjoy those delicious meals at our fabulous restaurants. So excited about that. I think that's a great partnership and something that I hope continues to grow and build, and that we can do some other good things with Restaurant Week besides great food and drinks. Coming up also, we do have our annual awards coming up. See, this is where I would have notes already, but y'all are killing me. So hang on. We have a new set of awards coming up and our annual awards. So our annual awards, which would normally be done at Street Life, will be on the 30th of October. That's when we'll hand out our small but mighty business of the year, our large business of the year, and some volunteer of the year awards. And then shortly after that, something that I'm very proud of, something that's been in the works for a couple of years now, is on November 8th, we have a new program kicking off. It's called Celebrate Her. It's an opportunity for us to celebrate our women business leaders in our community. Something that we've been wanting to do and looking to do for a while, and have finally partnered with the Women's Business League. I don't know if folks are familiar with that, but they have chapters around the Seacoast and around the state. That's a networking group specifically for women. So we're taking nominations for that now. If you know a great female business leader, there's kind of our normal categories: a large business, a small business, a nonprofit, and just sort of a catch-all for innovation there as well. And we will be partnering with our friends over at the CTE Center at Portsmouth High School, and we're going to be recognizing a high school a young woman at the high school as well. It shows a lot of promise and is considering, a path in business. So we're excited about that as well, to highlight a young person in our community that's going to do some great stuff in the world. Beyond that, we had a golf tournament yesterday. We have our Series Street Open coming up next week, which is a goofy little golf tournament. If you're not a real golfer, but you like to play a little putt-putt and maybe have a cocktail, that might be your jam. We are also, at the request of the Music Hall and Strawberry Bank and some others, we're taking the lead on Vintage Christmas, and we're in the process of building that out and moving website assets over to our platform and putting our advertising plan in play for that. So the nice thing about that is it will, coming to us, it will open the door for other folks to be involved in Vintage Christmas, like Jimmy's perhaps, or other entities like Players Ring and Seacoast Rep that might have holiday productions that have kind of been left out of the Vintage Christmas scene in the past, and we're going to open those doors up and let some other people participate. Lastly, I'll just kind of close with a partnership we are entering into with the city for a post tree lighting and parade festivities. It's kind of still a work in progress a little bit, but that'll be on the 2nd of December. Working very closely with Sean and the team here at the city on this, and DJ Scooch, not Jen Scapanci, but DJ Scooch, her alter ego, will be there. And the premise is quite simple. We're going to keep the streets closed for the parade until 9 o'clock that evening, which is a couple hours extra. Do some programming, have some music, have some maybe some fire pits, maybe some s'mores, that sort of stuff, hot chocolate, create a real kind of festival community vibe down there. Hopefully keep people downtown and let them shop. So we're going to be working with our retail community to stay open till 9 o'clock that night. And just try to keep as many people downtown as we can to start that purchasing season early for our downtown retailers. So really excited about that, and really appreciate Sean and the team at the city working with us to bring all that together. I didn't leave anything out there, Sean?
Nope.
Great. That's about it. A lot of other stuff going on. Oh, one other thing I'll mention. Sorry, I know I said I was done, but I can't. Next week on the 11th is the Catapults, which is the Young Professionals Network, is having their 10 to Watch Awards. That is an annual award that recognizes 20 young professionals in the Seacoast region that are doing great things, and 10 of them are the honorees each year. And that'll be, it's almost sold out. It'll be at the Music Hall Lounge next Wednesday night, 5:30 to 7:30, and that's a partnership between Catapult, the Chambers of the Seacoast, and Seacoast Media Group. So hopefully if you can check that out, or at least read about the winners, because they are doing some amazing things. So that's next Wednesday, the 11th, 5:30 to 7:30. I think that's it.
Who's the keynote speaker for that this year? Do you know?
Yes, I do know. It is, her name is escaping me, and that's sad. The owner of Laney and Lou.
Jen DeRogers.
Jen DeRogers, thank you. Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Excellent. Thanks, Ben. That's great off the cuff. So
You definitely are busy, too.
yes, yeah, we confirm you remain. So Sean, next up, we've got the Office of Economic Development.
Great. Thanks, Phil. So to build on a couple things Phil said, I went to that event last year. Al Fleury was the keynote speaker. Definitely wanted to meet him. But it's a great event, and you really get to see some emerging leaders on the Seacoast. So highly recommend it. To build on the Winter Festival evening, that really, for this group, is really, it came from a seed of really trying to focus on the retailers, because as we know, retailers would like to get the same attention as our restaurant crowd. So this is really important, and we had meetings at the chamber, and it's open to anybody outside of the chamber. They don't have to be a chamber member. But it's like the retailers are going to stay open and get people into their shops and get to know, hopefully, a lot of local residents, and they'll do their thing. So they're pretty excited about that. And the point is, it's about retail. It's not about other things, and we're planning more to engage with our retailers downtown so they have more of a voice and see that we are responding as the city and certainly as the EDC. Okay, get off my soapbox. I talk about AFTA, the Americas for the Arts. Survey is complete. There's information out, although it's embargoed until they roll it out. It's a whole thing. They do this across the country. But we will find out what our number is to refresh everybody's mind. From 2017, the economic impact was $58 million to the area. I don't think it's just Portsmouth. I think it's the Seacoast, but it's certainly greater Portsmouth. So that'll be rolling out. There'll be a whole thing. Someone flies in and does a presentation, and then the work starts to say, okay, how do we protect all this? How do we educate people about the value? So it's really in line with what we've been talking about as the EDC. The cultural plan, the consultants will be here in 2 weeks. They're going to do on-the-ground focus groups. So they're filling those up, and those are specifically with arts and culture leaders and with artists. That's a big thing. You want to make sure we get the studio artists and the people who create to talk about what should be in the cultural plan for them. And then there's some open sessions. The one that's wide open is Wednesday the 18th. It's going to be in City Council chambers, and it's going to be a town hall format, whereas the others are very specific focus group, kind of leading 8 to 10 to 12 people through the questions. But that's what's going on with the cultural plan. And if you missed it, there's a new Arts and Culture Commission that was created at the last City Council meeting. So that's the group that's going to be responsible for, okay, here's the cultural plan. How do we put it into action, right? Is that for me? Great. The last thing is I was talking to planning, and they put me on a list. Every time, I'm looking at you, Jacob, getting information, because I don't have a lot of information, and I don't know how to swim through all of our systems. But the planning group inspections group is going to copy me on every email for a tenant fit-up. So that's basically a new business moving into a space has to apply for a permit to refit the space. So then I'll know about it when they ask for that permit versus reading it in the paper like I normally do. So that's on me. I'm bearing my soul here. Why don't I know about these things? So I'm excited about that. It's just started. I'll keep this group posted if I can start to work that into more of a process. I've talked about the workforce development video that we put together regionally, the regional economic development folks. That's out. It's complete. And a couple things. That was made by Soho Creative, a local Portsmouth company. We were able to get them in front of Taylor Caswell, the Commissioner of Business and Economic Affairs. I believe that it's going to go statewide. It's just so well done, and it's such a need across the state. So it's nice that it's coming from a Portsmouth business from the Seacoast and being acknowledged as something really high quality and well needed. So I'll keep you posted if anything develops. From there, and I did reach out. Ben and I are going to connect with the new vice chancellor of the community college system. His name is Chuck Lloyd. He was the president of White Mountains Community College, and I know that they're focused on apprenticeship and workforce. So I think just being able to dial in at that level would give us some insight and maybe just more partnership. We do work with Great Bay, but sometimes the apprenticeship is based out of Concord, and that's just, we want to be able to make sure that businesses know what's available to them. So we're going to get that going. He asked if he could come to some kind of an event to meet all the key players on the Seacoast, and I think that's good. It's good for us to have that information or that kind of contact. So I'll stop there. That's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thanks, Ron. Do you know what the date is of that AFTA? There's like a big presentation.
January,
right?
It's not till January.
So in the new year.
Yeah.
January 11th. It'll be at Seacoast Rep Theater in the morning. I'm not sure exact time yet, but it's usually like at 8 or 8:30.
Thanks, Ben.
I think they hit Ben up. Didn't they hit you up?
Could I request that any events that we're told about from either the Chamber or you, Sean, end up in the meeting minutes?
Do you need catch all those?
No. So it would be good if in the summary we could have at least the next month of stuff that's coming up that you recommend. I don't know if that would be helpful for anyone else.
I think it's a great suggestion.
I agree.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, John. Counselor, I know it's been a busy
Good morning.
month.
Yeah. It's a busy season. I was just expressing to Phil outside that the first time I ran for council, I had a lot of time to run. This time, I also have city council to do. And so it's keeping me pretty busy. But anyway, some of the highlights, aside from the cultural plan committee, or if that's not the right name, but we've also approved the sustainability committee, which was a blue ribbon, sorry, not a red ribbon, a blue ribbon committee that we've turned into an ongoing committee. One of the unique things about this committee is that it, as a formal committee, it has some students in it who are not from Portsmouth. Most committees that are ongoing committees have to have residencies, so those students are actually representing the schools that they are in rather than themselves. So it's good. It's good to have the young people in those committees. We also, the other ordinance that passed was the candidate fund financial disclosures, and it's just more description includes what you spend and what you don't spend and what you raise. So anyway, police station work session is coming up, and that's on 11/3. That's been long in the planning. There are multiple sites that have been discussed, and this will be a work session with the police and the public to try to figure out just what needs to be done with the police station. We did receive a grant from the Department of Transportation, the Federal Department of Transportation. In fact, the mayor received a phone call from the Pete Buttigieg, he was surprised to just get this phone call. But we got $460,000 to study the railroad crossings and the Bartlett Street Bridge, do engineering studies to see if we can correct some of the issues there. I think that's a big start. For decades, we've been wanting to have that Bartlett Street Bridge a little better. So it's part of a $1.4 billion project, and Portsmouth is one of 70 communities that are receiving funds from that. So getting that engineering study first, and there's more money behind it apparently, so that's good. We did a survey of cable, Comcast, and they didn't fare well, and the people are not overly satisfied with what Comcast has to offer, and it's interesting because their non-exclusive contract expires in 2024, so we might have some leverage there to improve those services. So, there is, I have to mention, Phil was great at the city council meeting. He presented the outdoor dining results of this committee, and I was taken in. That's going to legal to put it into a ordinance format, then it'll come to the governance committee, and we'll see where it goes from there. But I'm sure there'll be more public comment on it. But the amount of public comment that you had here was really great and helpful. The Safe Water Advisory Group, SWAG, is basically they monitor the purity of our water, our drinking water, and they specifically monitor PFAS and lead and other things too, arsenic, things like that. The good news is, I mean, PFAS is always a problem. We have an amazing system of filters that remove most of that with it. We're very concerned about lead, and there's no lead in the water system sources. But the problem is that we have a city of older houses and older pipes within the houses. And so any bit of lead soldering and things like that in those pipes can create a problem. So they have funds to do free testing, and I have the, let me see if I can pull it up. You can get free testing, contacting the city to have your waters tested at your house. So if you give me a second. Well, there's a press release out, and I guess you talked to Kim McNamara, our health person, to get that. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something on the website.
There's something on the
Health
website for
Department
that,
page.
yeah.
Yep.
And then finally, I want to bring up the Archive Committee. This committee to study the creation of a public-private archive for the history of Portsmouth. One of the things that I have that is a problem is that we have multiple historical institutions that have a lot of archive materials, plus the city has a lot of archive materials. And so this committee is looking at creating a facility that can accommodate all of them. And it's a big project. I have said to everybody on the committee that it only took 20 years to get the library, but so we're starting this. And this was actually started in the 70s, in the 90s, earlier this decade. But what's different about this group is that we have a collaboration of the parties, and that wasn't true in the past. So we're looking forward to our report, and we're having a meeting on November 14th, the public meeting, to describe what our report says and also look for some more input. And Tom's on that committee. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that? No.
You've summarized it
Yeah.
perfectly.
So that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilor Tom.
Question, Vince. Can you give us any additional context on that railroad study? Is there like a list of railroad projects that have been out there? My understanding is that the rail yard and the lines are now owned by CXS, so one of the other large rail companies. Is there any indication that they might be enhancing their activity in Portsmouth? Or?
I don't know that, but we are looking at all the crossings through downtown to upgrade them.
Yeah, Tom, I'll just say in general, what the city manager would tell you is that we are in conversations with CSX as the new owner of that property. I've been in a couple of meetings where they have, I'll say big plans, but they have a lot of infrastructure they need to upgrade. So what we have works, but they plan on eventually upgrading their properties, their track. I think they've already put better locomotives on there, which addresses some of that idling that is a problem for that neighborhood. And but yeah, so they have bigger fish to fry in New Hampshire. That's the message I've gotten when sitting in meetings. But their plan is to upgrade and to move more business to Portsmouth. So maybe some people like that, some people don't. But I think better infrastructure, more efficient equipment, certainly locomotives, is in everybody's best interest because they bought it. They're going to use the line, and we'll have to see how their business develops from there. Just a little color commentary.
Well, it might be an interesting subject for a visit by somebody from CSX next year or something.
I will make a note to find out where the conversations are at with the city and then go from there.
Great.
Thanks, Tom. Any other questions for Councilor Lombardi? And thanks for the comments on the outdoor dining. That's really reflective of this group. I think it was very well received, and for anyone who didn't watch it, they asked some good questions, and I think the intent was to move quickly towards an ordinance that, as we suggested, would supersede anything that exists today and incorporate the policy. So thanks to everybody for the time and energy that we've put into that. So since we don't have Bob here for land use updates, and the assistant mayor was not able to attend today, I think we'll save that discussion for next month. And then the next on our agenda, we have cruise ship discussion as an item. And as I'm sure many of you recall, we did get a couple of emails from Jim Hewitt in past months while we weren't, it was a little before we could take this topic up. And given the request and the new ordinance for the EDC, we do have kind of the opportunity to take suggestions as they come in from the public occasionally and review them. I think this was a strong suggestion that we take this up, and I think we're going to be hearing from the director of the ports next month. That will be our plan. We'll talk a little bit about the next couple months towards the end of today's meeting. But wanted to bring this back to the group today for a general discussion, just to hear from commissioners on any thoughts or items that we'd like to take up to understand whether this is something that we feel would be a net benefit to the community, retailers, restaurants, et cetera. I think we have certain infrastructure that we're dealing with. There was another email that Jim Hewitt sent last night. We did invite him to come speak with us today, but I think the information he has sent to date summarizes effectively his perspective. So I know historically we did have some cruise ship activity at the port, and I know it's a very challenging economic model and I think requires a fair amount of traffic, but wanted to bring it to this group for discussion this morning, just to understand where we see what we might recommend or any research we want to do to either necessitate this and make further suggestions, or I think let it lie where it currently is, which is not necessarily anywhere. So some of the general problems we know exist for cruise ships, what we've heard, and I think we'll learn more next month, but impediments might be inadequate docking facilities, competing scheduling for dock space with shipping interests, the tidal aspects of our river, PDA's appetite or lack thereof in pursuing the market, the tugboats limitation and their ability to guide and tow cruise ships in and out of Portsmouth. And this is all in an email that will circulate to this group after the meeting. Not enough room or channel depth for cruise ships to turn around. We know there's been some improvements in infrastructure further upriver. And no formal invitation for those cruise ships to come back and reconduct doing business, or the impact from September 11th. So it's a pretty broad menu of things that clearly are drivers at various points in time that may have impacted their ability. I know that there is activity further north in Portland and further south in likely the Carolinas and some other markets. So I know everyone kind of brings different perspective to the table, and Ben, great, obviously, input and insight into the retail community that may or may not benefit from this in a restaurateur. So I guess I would open it up to the group for any questions or comments.
I just have a question. I'm just curious if anybody here experienced cruise ships coming to Portsmouth. I have not.
No.
Yeah, I remember that.
Is it like we talking more than 20 years ago, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was, you
Wow.
know,
Yeah, 90s
In
maybe.
the 90s, yeah.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that, Tom? Just from your experience. I'm not.
Well, my thoughts are in a haze of old age, but you know, my memory was that there was two pushes. One was in the early '90s when Steve Griswold of the Sheridan wanted to bring in the Scotia Prince on a regular basis. And in fact, the chamber sponsored it, brought it in for a one-night event. But that was the primary function of that ship was gambling, offshore gambling, and so it had its limitations on being able to, you can't, at least at that time, I'm not sure what the law is now, but you had to be at least like 10 miles offshore or something.
Couldn't park and gamble.
You couldn't park, and then I recall probably in the mid to late '90s there was an effort to bring in smaller, those cruise ships, not the large 10-story things, but the smaller ones that hold 125 people or something like that do fall cruises along the New England coast,
Right.
pop from one small port to another up to Quebec City. And I wasn't actually actively involved in it. And then with the Scotia Prince, I was on the chamber board at the time, so I remember dealing with that a lot. But my memory was that there were issues with the fact that there's really only one pier that could accommodate these, and it's occupied by salt things. It's occupied by scrap metal. There were issues with the fact that I guess what happens in some of these locations is that they drop anchor offshore and have their own little shuttle ships
Yeah.
that bring people back and forth. But that didn't seem to work as well with Portsmouth, I think, because of the river having a very fast tide. There were all sorts of logistical issues, and then my memory was that no one was talking about it anymore. So I did have a chance to talk to Gino Marconi about 2 weeks ago, just to extend to him an invitation to visit with us and make a general report on the port and harbors. And we briefly discussed this, and he said he would be prepared to come and talk about the experiences in the past on this and what the obstacles were at least from the State Port Authority.
Yep.
I do know that in the past, I think the chamber was the primary driver for this. I'm guessing that it probably hasn't been a subject in the last 25 years.
It has not been a topic of discussion in my time at the chamber. I am loosely familiar. That was probably more information than I've had about our previous involvement. I knew we had some role to play in it, but I didn't know the extent of it. But I too have had conversations with Gino about this topic, and he didn't paint a real positive picture of the opportunity to bring cruise ships in. But I think it really depends on what we're talking about. You know, there's cruise ships of all shapes and sizes, as you've sort of alluded to, and there may be some opportunity there, but I don't think the opportunity exists for the large, Carnival-type cruise lines, and I don't know much about cruise ships, but I don't think that exists for Portsmouth.
Sarah.
I'm interested in the context of the requests. I know we've received multiple requests from Jim Hewitt, but are folks reaching out to the chamber requesting information on cruise ships? Is more of the public reaching out? Where does this fit into Portsmouth's overall economic development plan, cultural plan, et cetera? Or is this a singular request that's worth looking at, but we have to look at it in context of the information that we already have available about Portsmouth's economic environment.
Yeah, also, my reaction is that this is a lot of infrastructure and logistics and things that are beyond the control, right? I mean, we either have a pier or we don't. We have tides or we don't. The tugs can handle them or they're not. None of that talks about the commercial issues and what's the value to our economic development plans and to our city and to our businesses and our citizens. So this is really the hard stuff. And
Or even cruise ship companies requesting to come here. I don't know that we have any information on that either.
I can speak on behalf of the chamber and say that we have not been contacted by any cruise ships desiring to come to Portsmouth, nor do we get requests or questions from visitors if we have cruise ships. We get requests about harbor tours and things like that, which we do have, but we have not had any requests about cruise ships.
And I would think from an economic perspective, given the challenges, having the local options that sort of bring you in and out of the city where you can stay, eat, purchase, dine, all of that stuff may be more advantageous from an economic perspective than a larger non-local option. But
Right.
I don't have any evidence to support that. It's just a feeling.
And I think part of the cruise ship model is that oftentimes there's like a somewhat inexpensive hotel stay on either end of that experience, so you can get on the cruise ship first thing in the morning. And certainly that would be a struggle for us, or at least downtown. We don't have probably room rates that would be attractive for that. There might be room rates elsewhere, but then you're talking a lot logistics of moving people and where the cars go and this and that. But I think that would be a barrier for a lot of this too.
Counselor?
Just the question is, I've only seen this from Jim. Has there been a request from anyone else?
No, there has not.
And
Yep.
And then some of the, I don't have data to back this up, but some of the urban legend, I'll say, is that people don't spend money coming off of cruise ships, except for very small items. They don't go to the restaurants because they have
their meals are paid for.
They have
Yeah.
their food on the cruise ship. They have, you might get coffee, or something like that. So, as I say, this is what I term urban legend. I don't know this data
Yeah.
as fact, but I've heard it from a number of places that the cruise ships are more of a burden on the economy than they are a benefit.
Great, thank you. No, and to Sarah's question, I think it's the latter. There's not been, as Ben said, any volume of inbound or outbound requests for it. I think it's a fair point. So I think any discussion in the cultural plan or other kind of larger master planning efforts to understand how we want our the context of the downtown to look and feel, this would be a good factor for it. And I think there's I would imagine ample studies that show, based on cruise ship size and composition and whether they're inclusive, that kind of speak to some of those points. I would say if we can underscore, or if there's information available that summarizes that, I think if we can say it's not a net positive to the business community, it's not something that we would be in a position to advocate for. I think it's worth research there, and I think if we hear from Gino next month, that would help us understand some of the infrastructure points. But I think between those two items, that really tells us whether there's any opportunity or potential that we should be advocating for, from our seats anyway. Any further questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I will say that when I was searching for Gino's telephone number, I went to the Port Authority website, and I noticed that they do have sort of a menu for different sources of inquiry, and one of which was cruise ships. So probably he's going to be in as good a position as anybody to say whether there's any outside interest in it.
Yeah. And to that, no, I do know, and I had to search my email to find this. Gino did bring something to me back in 2022, I think it was, where somebody did bring a proposal to the Port Authority. I think that's the one time I did have some conversation with Gino about this. So it is not uncommon for these proposals to circulate every couple of years. But I do think what we'll hear from Gino is that the logistics of it in Portsmouth and our tides and all the factors that we've already kind of talked about, it's a tough sell. So.
Right, so that's the other side of it. We, even if we wanted cruise ships, if we're not attractive to them, they're going to make a business decision to go somewhere else, which is kind of what they've done already, right?
Anecdotally, just, in traveling and vacationing, so Ben and I both have an office right across from the salt pile and the commercial pier there, and I think that would be the target.
Yes.
For a landing port. So it is deep water, but in watching how cargo ships come in and out of there, and then in watching primarily on vacation time how cruise ships come in and out of vacation destinations, that port looks nothing at all like a cruise ship, the port that you would see in Maui or that you would see in Spain or that you would see.
Sure.
It looks completely different. And the one in Portland is, in my opinion, is an absolute mess when departure times happen. I mean, people that look like they're going to fall off the side of the dock when the herd comes through there. And all of that's anecdotal and not database, but the way that those ships approach a port and need to maneuver it requires significant space and has a significant impact for the amount of time, significant impact on other marine recreational and commercial activities while that ship is there. It's a huge impact. It's like a city moving into a port.
And we don't own any land, right? The city of Portsmouth doesn't own any riverfront.
Right.
So, to the
Prescott Park.
yes, thank you, Ben. Sorry.
Not in the mats.
Any buildable. Yeah. No, and then if you all recall the headlines from this past summer in Bar Harbor, where the town basically restricted the number of cruise ships that could come in because they were just getting inundated. I mean, so there's the opposite, right? We're like, no, you can't come here, or you have to limit, or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of aspects to this question.
And Bar Harbor is one of those ports where the cruise ships dock on a floating dock and shuttle in, and it's a lot of boat traffic. It's a sight, really. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that there are no cruise ships may be suggestive of why they haven't come in the past. Portsmouth is a classic place you'd want to stop if you're doing tours of, New York to Montreal, that type of thing. I mean, this is the type of place that they'd want to be if they could make it work. And it's almost, I don't think it's probably just because they weren't getting an invitation. I think there are logistical issues that suggest that it's hard to make it happen. I mean, the other thing is if you've, as I understand it, typically these boats sail at night. They leave at like 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then they arrive in 5, 6 o'clock the next morning. If you've got a regular stream of boats coming in and something else has to come in, it depends, I guess, on the port, like a salt ship or scrap metal or a container ship or something, and they aren't going to wait out off the coast for that dock to free up.
Wow.
The cost to keep something like that sitting out there for a day or two, it would just cause them to go find a new port. So, but I at least my feeling is that the person that can give us the understanding about this is probably Gino more than anybody else. And, you know, it was funny, I did overhear a conversation involving one of the city councilors discussing this, and the suggestion was that that the format of cruise ships, which have, you know, potentially 1,000 people coming in over a 5 or 6 hour period of time, overwhelming a downtown and then disappearing, really upsets the typical rhythm of a retail district, a restaurant district, that type of thing. You know, suddenly if you do have restaurants, they're crammed, and then the rest of the day they're empty, that type of thing. And so, but from my perspective, I'm happy to have somebody from the public suggest something for us to look at. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to go into a deep dive and spend weeks trying to flesh it out. But I think it probably, Gino will be able to answer a lot of the questions that at least come to my mind.
Great. No, I fully agree. I think this is, you know, given our unique geography, it's a question worth asking. And I think once we hear from Gino next month, I think we'll be in a position to move forward or move away from any further discussion on this. So appreciate the input. Okay, we've got a relatively light agenda for this month's meeting. Next item we have on here is open conversation about 2024 priorities. So we did have our strategic retreat at the beginning of the year, and I feel like we've made good headway, and much of what we discussed in terms of getting the ordinance revised with regards to our functioning. That feels like a big win. I know there were several other items we discussed, and this is really intended to be kind of an open discussion ahead of continuing that exercise or reorienting ourselves in the new year. So I would open it to this group. I know there's a few folks who aren't here today, but as you know, we've moved on from outdoor dining and our ordinance. I think it's worth kind of taking a step back and thinking about, given where the city is, you know, some of the other items that have been going on with other committees like land use and anything further impacting zoning. You know, good to at least have an open discussion here about what we might want to take up in more detail at that meeting in the beginning of next year. So, Tom, anything further you wanted to add on that before we open it to the group?
No, I think I anticipate we'll have another planning session in January, and I just think if we had a little more, I mean, given we still only have 2 or 3 hours to accomplish the planning for the year, if we could bounce some ideas around, and even after this meeting, maybe send them to Sean or something, so that we can have a more concrete agenda when we go into the planning session. I just think we'd be better off.
Great.
So I've organized the planning items every year that we've had this, and we always gather information and bring them together, and we always come up with the same lists. So my recommendation would be that we take what we identified last year, recirculate that, and say, is there anything that should come off this list or anything that should be added to it? Because otherwise it's going to be a curation exercise for Sean, I think, only to arrive at the same 5 or 6 top topics that we usually focus on: housing, workforce development, climate awareness, and, you know, being conscious of both workers and business owners within the city.
Thanks, Sarah.
The big change is we won't be spending half the session talking about our mission and
Exactly. And then I think now that we have our charter revised, we can take a look at those top issues that we've talked about and say, how might we approach these differently, given our new charter, and how much engagement and involvement we can have with other organizations within the community.
Great.
And I think for Jen's awareness, a lot of work went in over the course of this year to identify whether the EDC is in a position of advocacy or study. Historically, we've had items referred to us to go and research and then bring that information back, and we felt very strongly that it was our role to be able to reach out to different constituents within the community and take on more of that advocacy or recommendation role than we've necessarily had in the past.
And I'll just say, you all have heard me say previously, but, we have a climate action plan, so do we want to be engaged in that? From my office, I think the business community needs to be represented, it needs to be heard, it needs to be brought in if they're not engaged, right? There's an RFP went out for the Market Square plan, not the master plan, right? Just the Market Square plan, and what should downtown look like, what changes should the city make? Businesses need to have a voice there. We certainly should be engaged there. And then there's the actual master plan, right, which is launching next year, which is the 10-year plan. And then there's the cultural plan. So all these things affect, as I've been thinking about where do we go next, this group's accomplished a lot this year. There's a lot of things at play, and just whether it's my office or my office plus this group, we can be engaging businesses, and maybe they're not used to being asked, maybe they're not used to advocating for themselves or supporting us and advocating for them. I just feel like this is a real opportunity with this fresh ordinance and new focus and kind of a new calendar year coming around. Get off my soapbox.
Great. Yeah. Andy?
One item I think that was on the last January agenda was the business retention and expansion. I think I'm remembering that correctly. And I would love a little more time to be spent on that. And one of the things I wish for that effort is figuring out the most efficient way for follow-up to happen. That potentially is like, it could, it could be a real labor-intensive effort, or it could be a hybrid effort, or it could be something that we identify what the available labor resources are beyond the committee and Sean's office, and how we use what we have to reach out. But that survey was such a great resource. I just don't want it to see it be left in a box. And all that information is still relevant too.
Right.
But if it goes on, without being leveraged, contact information gets old, phone numbers get old, all of that kind of stuff, it starts to erode. So anyways, I'd like to see that agenda item maybe get a little bigger in this next January retreat. I think it's really, whether it's interns or whatever,
Yeah.
CET program maybe.
So I'm happy to chime in on this. Just for some of our newer members, I mean, we had a business retention expansion survey, right, last year.
Yeah. Yes.
Was it last year? End of 21.
Yes.
End of 21. And we got some results back. We went to the UNH Survey Center. From that, one of the things I started looking at was that we need a database. So I have a database. I'm working with the provider to actually do some of the work that you might hire an intern to do. I mean, we're not going to call 3,000 companies and confirm their contact and confirm their email. There's software that can do that. So to your point, Andy, I think the goal, I'm recalling Alan and other conversations about how the goal then, after we got that survey, was how do we engage with employers and businesses and stay engaged, not just every couple of years we do a big survey. It's more about two-way dialogue, whether different communication channels, to your point. The conversation I have with the database provider is, can you create an opt-in form, right? And just invite businesses to engage with us. And then the onus is on either my office or this group to demonstrate value to them. Why am I engaging with the EDC, or why am I engaging with the Office of Economic Development? What's in it for me as a business owner, right? And a lot of times it's the smaller business owners. So they've got a lot of things to do, which I'm up for the challenge. If we need to demonstrate value, then I'm gonna count on this group to help me identify what that value is that we're gonna put out. So, just to say, I feel like there is this opportunity. We did start talking about it last year. We didn't make a ton of progress, but I think there's some tools there that we could leverage.
That survey was A-plus work. I mean,
Yeah.
And the results were better than I anticipated. It was a really good project. Maybe there could be, I think of friends of mine that are sales managers, so they're managing salespeople. Maybe we can have volunteers that get assigned to an account, kind of thing, but it's limited to 10 accounts or something like
Yeah.
that instead of 3,000. That's another idea that I had coming into this. Yeah, we're not gonna have personal relationships with
Yeah.
3,000 businesses.
But to your point, having a communication channel, this database software, it will allow us to actually create our own surveys, which, that's better than asking the city to spend what we spent with the UNH Survey Center. And we're closer to it, right? It could be more of a back and forth. It could be more controlled. It could be more targeted versus, I'm going to send it out to everybody, every LLC in the city. And, it's just not, we don't have great data, but maybe we can find a way to start curating our own data.
I think some of the content we have in this meeting is an underutilized resource. If we were to advertise, we're going to have parking and transportation come in the month of October, and they're going to talk about it in the city. A business community, dial in and listen. Like we have a lot of good information that could be beneficial to the community if we were to curate and target and notify. We don't necessarily have to do anything other than what we're already doing in some regards, just maybe scheduling it, structuring it, planning it, and advertising it.
Great. Tom?
I think the one thing about that survey was that it took anybody responding to it a fair amount of time to answer it because it was so comprehensive. I think it would be helpful as a regular form of communication to have something similar to what the city council does with that
Flash vote.
flash vote. So where whatever, once a month or once a quarter, whatever, when we have an issue or a question, or we're looking for feedback on needs or something, we're sending it out to the entire survey, and they just have to answer 3 questions or 1 question, and something that they can do in 2 minutes or less.
Something not flash vote, you mean, but flash vote like?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it can't be just a yes or no, but if we're, if somebody's, if I don't know, if we were pursuing cruise ships or something, if we sent it out to the entire poll saying, do you think that having cruise ships would benefit your business or something? Again, that's a bad example, but the idea really is, how do you stay involved with the limited resources that we have? Right. And I think the flash polls or a variation on that, where people don't have to spend, 20 minutes.
5 minutes at the most.
Yeah. Might be a way of staying in touch, and also we could use that to accomplish what Sarah's saying, which is, in the context of that poll, we could say, we anticipate having this subject during the month of October. What do you think? Or how does it fit into your needs? Or
I think it's great to look at this as an opportunity, and I'm flashing to, I've been attending the Let's Talk Shop meetings at the Chamber, and Let's Talk Tourism, and you in there, and there's 10, 12. I mean, the other day there's a lot of businesses sitting in the conference room at the Chamber, and I'm there as a city, and I'm giving updates, and I'm taking questions, and I'm coming back and getting answers. And part of this retail focus, I mean, they thanked us for just coming and talking to them, for me, because they're like, this is great. We can talk to the Chamber all we want, but we want to talk to the city. So I'm drawing a parallel to it's an opportunity. What if we were more engaged in these conversations, or people were showing up on Zoom, and it was much more about how do we support the business community? How do we advocate? What issues are we challenging? I'll just say this, versus reporting out to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a little insular. Just not a judgment, just an observation, right? Because a lot of this information that we talk about that I'm going to then send back out is out there, right? So this is our opportunity. I'll just throw this out to you all at the strategic meeting. How do these meetings? How do you want these meetings to run? What do you want them to accomplish? What purpose can they serve in terms of engaging and demonstrating value to the business community? Wow, a lot of soapboxes over here.
Yeah, no, I think great dialogue. I mean, all really good points, and I think kind of where we are and with the new charter frames how we can orient ourselves in the year ahead and talk about the work we're going to do. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
So a thought I had is I'm not a particularly bright person, but I'm really good at learning from others and finding good ideas that people have done elsewhere and bringing them here. And I think there might be an opportunity for this group to take lessons from other communities of where they've found success and find ways to bring that success here to Portsmouth. And I know from talking to retailers, Newburyport right down the road is like held up as a great example of a great community that works together as a retail community to support the retailers, and maybe it's worth dialogue or taking a 45-minute road trip down the river, road or half hour, whatever it is, down there to meet with those folks and learn from them. I think there's opportunities as we talk about Market Square redesign. Burlington's done some amazing things. Again, that could be an opportunity to either connect on Zoom with them or venture up there and walk it and see what's going on, and just learn from some of our peers. Even as close as Dover, I was in a meeting that the United Way put together with all the developers of the Seacoast region, and that if we're going to talk about affordable housing, every developer around that table said how great Dover was to work with, and they didn't say the same thing about Portsmouth. And I'm curious to see, can we go and talk to the folks in Dover and see what the barrier, like how they're doing it, what makes them so attractive. And there's probably some things that we can't control, like availability of land, things like that, I know. But there may be some lessons learned there that we could try to get in place here in Portsmouth. So that's something I'd consider for us to look into, is how do we learn from other communities in the region and maybe make a field trip or something like that to see how things are done in Portland or Newburyport or wherever. Because I think we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's already smart people out there that have figured this out, and we can learn from them.
I'd like that to be an agenda item on the retreat too. I've found that my work with planning board and city council, that same thing happens. I was part of the skateboard ordinance, and I've been following the bike Middle Street saga that's gone on. Montreal, could inform Middle Street's bike lanes because they have such a comprehensive bicycling route structure up there. So I totally agree, and I've said that before too. Borrowing from Dover, Newburyport, Portland, Maine, I think could be, and some of the common challenges that they have.
Yeah, great.
So just a tidbit, our planning and sustainability director and our housing advocate were at that meeting. So they heard that feedback about how great Dover is to work with.
Yep, I have heard those same comments. Anything further? I think that'll be a great exercise. I think in particular just to comment on kind of the economic conditions right now. I know a downturn is always the big question mark, and I think just kind of understanding how all of our businesses are being impacted or not impacted here because of bigger macro factors is important to know. And if we have kind of an open dialogue and more frequent communication, we'll have a better read on that. And there may or may not be something that we can do or the city can do, but I think it's important that we're aware of it because that obviously can change the context of the downtown or office community, et cetera. Okay. Thanks, everybody. So next we've got public comment. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Do not.
Steve? Okay. So as we mentioned, our next regularly scheduled meeting is November 3rd. And then I believe December 1st will be our last. Let me pull up my calendar, just look at that and make sure it is December 1st. Yes, December 1st will be the first Friday of December. As of right now, we're scheduled to hear from Gino next month, as we've talked about, and I think we've talked about a visit to the CTE program in December potentially, so just to have that on your radar, on offsite, and continuing the relationship we have with that group, and hearing from some other students than we have in the past. And
Were there other topics that I'm trying to recall the emails, besides Gino next, like commercial real estate?
yeah, so I had talked about potentially hearing from David Choate with third quarter information once that's finalized through September at our December meeting. It's been a period of time since we've heard from them on what occupancy looks like in the city and where things are. Andy, you can certainly speak to that and bring context,
Yeah,
but
it
I don't think
should
we've
be
had that.
numbers 2 days ago.
Great.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'd be in a position for a November presentation. David had suggested December, so I think he'll be visiting us there, but want to be sure that everyone's got time. So I think it'll be either December or January from a commercial real estate perspective, but obviously important. And I think we've got some other potential offsite visits that we haven't really firmed up yet, but we'll plan to do that. I think we've spent more time in Conference Room A this summer than we typically would, so I think we'll probably try to get out for another visit and get out and maybe see a project or hear from a business or see a business in the months ahead.
So I'll just say, just a reminder, when we do that, we're not recording, we're not able to have people come in from Zoom. So just something to think about as you look at
Yep.
going forward. One other PSA here, if you will. I mentioned that I've been attending the parking utilization study group meetings, and there is a report that's going to be coming out, and there'll be public, the DPW will be seeking, or the parking department will be seeking public input, and I wanted to let this group know it would be great if you could be there. It's not confirmed, but it's looking, there's a target of Wednesday, the 15th of November at 6:30, City Council Chambers. And once I have that confirmed, hopefully later today, I'll zip it out to the group. But wanted to make you aware of that. And as we mentioned, I mean, parking is just such an integral part of downtown, obviously, in our economic development. So A, this group being really informed, and B, being an advocate for how parking does support our business and our economic development, I think would be great, unless you don't think it does. And we'll go from there. But so.
Is that a standalone meeting?
It is. Yes, it's the consultant will be there, and the parking group will be there to talk about this is the work we've done, and there's been public folks on that parking utilization study group. But this is just another opportunity to really to open it up to more public comment and understanding and questions. So, A, you can, I think it'd be great if we all could be there, and then secondly, it'd be interesting to hear what people have to say, other people. So it's just it's a good opportunity if you can be there.
Great. And in terms of the offsites, so I'll be sure for the public, for anyone who's watching, we'll have at least a month's notice. I think there generally would be opportunities for public to attend, depending on location, but
Yeah, it's just something to think about, just in
Yeah.
terms of not
Broadcasting.
having,
Yeah.
not having Zoom capability.
Yep, great. Thanks, everybody. So I think we're running a bit ahead of schedule, so if there's no further comment or public business, public comment or further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thanks, everybody.